There is a gesture that many women make without realizing they are making it. A gesture so ingrained in daily routine that it has become invisible to conscious thought. It is the gesture of pulling hair forward, of arranging it just so around the face, of making sure that certain areas remain covered, certain angles remain hidden, certain truths remain veiled behind a curtain of strands. It happens in the morning in front of the bathroom mirror. It happens in restaurant restrooms between courses. It happens reflexively whenever a camera appears, this urgent need to arrange the hair so that it falls in front of rather than behind. And if you were to ask the woman making this gesture what she is doing, she might not be able to articulate it clearly, but somewhere in the wordless depths of her awareness, she knows. She is hiding. She is using her hair as a safety curtain between her aging face and the eyes of the world. I want to sit with you in this moment of what I call the hiding instinct, because I understand it more deeply than words can express. Many women over 60 keep their hair long and shapeless because they genuinely believe it is protecting them. They believe that the length hides the aging neck that has lost its tautness. They believe that the curtain of hair softens the jawline that has begun to blur where it once was sharp. They believe that if they can just keep enough fabric, enough coverage, enough visual interference between their face and the observer, somehow the changes will become invisible. But here is the painful paradox that nobody explains in the salon chair. This safety curtain is not hiding what you think it is hiding. The heavy vertical shadow that long, shapeless hair creates actually emphasizes the very drooping you are trying to conceal. It amplifies it. It echoes it. The downward lines of your hair running parallel to the downward lines of your face create a visual harmony of descent that makes everything appear to be falling together. The strategic shift we need to make together requires understanding a simple physics equation that governs everything we will discuss today. Gravity plus length equals drag. This is not metaphor. This is the literal reality of how weight interacts with vertical lines. If your face is softening downwards, if the jowls have begun to form where the jawline once defined itself sharply, if the eyelids have begun to hood where they once opened wide, then your hair cannot also be moving downward. Your hair must move upward and outward. It must create the opposite vector. It must counteract what gravity is doing instead of reinforcing it. We are moving from hiding the face to framing the structure, from using hair as a veil to using it as a pedestal. Claude Juillard, the French pioneer of visagism who dedicated his career to understanding how hair interacts with facial structure, articulated something that should be written on the wall of every salon. He said that the hair must not be a frame that imprisons the face, but a pedestal that elevates it. That if the lines of the hair go down, the spirit of the face goes down. That phrase, the spirit of the face, captures something that pure geometry cannot. It is not just about angles and vectors. It is about the energy that your image projects, the vitality that people perceive when they look at you, the sense of whether you are rising or falling, ascending or descending, alive or merely existing. Today, I am going to expose the 3 common gravity traps, styles that act like anchors on your face, pulling everything downward even as you believe they are protecting you. And I am going to reveal the 3 lift cuts that create what I think of as an optical suspension system for your features, holding everything up where it belongs, defying the downward pull that time and gravity create together. The first gravity trap is something I call the triangle of age, and it is created by a specific pattern of volume distribution that many women develop without realizing it. The geometry is a bob or mid-length cut that is flat at the roots, often due to the natural thinning that comes with age, and wide or frizzy at the bottom. This creates an A shape or pyramid, narrow at the top and expanding as it descends toward the shoulders. The visual impact of this shape is devastating when you understand what it is communicating to the observer's eye. The aging face naturally loses volume in the cheeks, those rounded areas that youth filled with fat and collagen. Simultaneously, it gains volume in the lower jaw as the jowls form and the tissues descend. This haircut mimics and exaggerates that exact aging process. The narrow top echoes the loss of volume in the upper face. The wide bottom echoes the gain of volume in the lower face. It creates what I think of as a melting candle effect, where everything appears to be sliding downward, pooling at the bottom, giving up the fight against gravity. The rule that must guide every decision about volume placement is absolute. You must invert the triangle. Volume belongs at the parietal ridge, that curved area at the crown and sides of your head. It never belongs at the jawline. When you concentrate fullness at the top and keep the bottom sleek and close to the head, you create an inverted triangle, the geometric shape of youth, wide at the top, narrow at the bottom. This shape counteracts what aging does to the face. It restores balance. It creates the visual impression of lift even when the actual tissue has descended. The first lift cut that embodies this principle is what I call the neck elongator, and it is technically known as a graduated nape bob. The architecture of this cut is specific. It is stacked shorter in the back, creating layers that build upon each other, and slightly longer in the front, where the hair angles down toward the collarbone. This is not a blunt horizontal line. This is a diagonal that tells a story of movement and ascent. The mechanism of why this cut lifts has to do with what happens at the nape of the neck. By tightening the hair in that area, by cutting it close and layered, you visually lengthen the cervical spine. This is significant because the neck often appears to compress with age, to shorten, to disappear into the shoulders as posture changes and tissues settle. The graduated nape creates the opposite impression. It suggests length where there might be compression. It creates elegance where there might be heaviness. The lift this cut provides extends beyond the neck. The diagonal line of the cut draws the eye up and forward along the cheekbone, guiding the observer's gaze in a lifting trajectory rather than allowing it to drag downward. It acts like what architects call a buttress, a structural support that holds up the back of the head and lifts the entire profile. When you see a woman with this cut from the side, her head appears to be elevated, her posture appears perfect, her presence appears commanding. The cut is doing work that her muscles alone cannot do. The second gravity trap involves texture rather than volume distribution, and it is perhaps the most common mistake I see in women who have kept their hair long past the point where it serves them. I call it the Curtain of Gloom, and it is simply long, straight, static hair without any layers to break it up. Just two panels of hair hanging down on either side of the face like drapes that have never been opened. The vector theory explains why this is so damaging to the mature face. Aging features create downward vectors. The nasolabial folds run from nose to mouth, pulling down. The marionette lines run from mouth to chin, pulling down. The jowls form along the jaw, pulling down. Everything in your face is creating lines that point toward the earth. And when you add straight vertical hair to this equation, you create parallel lines. Hair running down, wrinkles running down, everything aligned in the same direction. The result of these parallel lines is that they reinforce each other. The eye sees the hair and uses it as a measuring stick, calculating exactly how much the face has descended by comparing it to the straight vertical edge of the hair. It is the most unforgiving frame possible for a mature face because it offers no distraction, no interruption, no competing direction that might draw attention away from the downward pull. The hair becomes a ruler, and the ruler is measuring your age with cruel precision. The second lift cut offers a radical alternative for women who are ready to embrace the transformation that short hair can provide. I call it the cheekbone sculptor, and it is a pixie with a kick. The style features short sides, a tapered neck, but with volume and texture concentrated on top. It is not a uniform buzz. It is architecture, with deliberate height, where height creates lift, and deliberate closeness, where closeness creates elegance. The focal point this cut creates is revolutionary when you understand what it does to the observer's gaze. By removing the hair from around the jawline entirely, you force the eye to travel upward. There is nothing to look at in the lower portion of your head. The eye has no choice but to rise to where the interest is. Your eyes, the tops of your ears, the textured crown that draws attention like a magnet. The jawline still exists, of course, but it is no longer the focus. It has been demoted from protagonist to background. The illusion this creates is a V-shaped silhouette, the geometric opposite of the triangle of age we discussed earlier. Wide at the top, narrow at the bottom. It is the equivalent of a surgical facelift because it removes all the visual weight that was dragging the lower face down. It exposes the neck, which might seem counterintuitive for women who are self-conscious about that area, but exposed neck suggests vulnerability and elegance in ways that hiding it never can. The very act of showing communicates confidence that hiding denies. Before we continue to the third gravity trap, I need to address something that stops many women from considering the lift cuts we are discussing. It is the dilemma of bangs, and specifically the difference between what I call the helmet and the veil. The mistake that ages women dramatically is heavy. Blunt bangs cut straight across the eyebrows, that solid barrier of hair that looks like it was cut with a ruler and a laser. This creates a dark shadow over the eyes, reducing the light that reaches your most expressive feature. It boxes the face in, making it look smaller and squatter, like a portrait that has been pushed into a frame too tight for it. The lift strategy for bangs is what stylists call wispy curtain bangs. These are soft, see-through, almost accidental-looking strands that curve around the temples instead of cutting straight across. The effect is that they cover forehead wrinkles in what I think of as the Venetian blind effect, allowing glimpses of skin through the gaps while still providing coverage. But unlike the helmet, they do not close off the light. They do not create shadows. They soften the harsh angles of the face while still allowing the eyes to shine through. This is the veil rather than the helmet, the suggestion rather than the barrier. The third gravity trap involves something as simple as where you part your hair, and it is a habit that many women have maintained for decades without questioning whether it still serves them. I call it the divider, and it is the strict center part that runs from forehead to crown like a line of severity, splitting the face in two. The anatomy of what this part does to your face is mathematical in its cruelty. It draws a line straight down to the nose and the chin, emphasizing the vertical center of your face with precision, and that precision highlights every asymmetry that exists between the two sides. If one eye is lower than the other, the center part makes it obvious. If one jowl is heavier than its partner, the center part announces it. The perfect symmetry of the part contrasts with the imperfect asymmetry of the face, and the face loses that comparison every time. The fix is a deep side part, or a zigzag part, anything that introduces irregularity, where there was rigid symmetry. The logic behind this is that asymmetry is actually youthful. Young faces are not perfectly symmetrical either, but the softness and fullness disguises that asymmetry. A side part creates volume at the root because you are sweeping hair across the crown. That volume lifts, and the diagonal line of the parting forces the eye to scan across the face diagonally, following a lifting trajectory rather than dropping straight down. The gravity that was pulling everything toward the center is now being interrupted by a competing diagonal that suggests movement in a different direction. The third lift cut offers an option for women who are terrified of short hair, but who understand that their current length is not serving them. I call it the kinetic frame, and it is technically a butterfly shag. This is a mid-length cut that reaches approximately to the clavicle, featuring heavy layers that are styled to flick outward and upward, away from the face, like wings preparing for flight. The movement this cut creates is its primary power. Unlike the static curtain of long straight hair, the butterfly shag is never still. The ends of the hair are styled to curve out and up, creating a constant visual of energy and motion. This matters because jowls curve in and down. They are static. They are heavy. Hair that curves out and up creates what I call a visual contradiction. The observer's eye cannot focus on the downward curve of the jaw when it is distracted by the upward curve of the hair. The kinetic energy of the moving ends draws attention away from the static heaviness of the jaw. The distraction this provides is not deception. It is redirection. You are not pretending the jowls do not exist. You are simply providing something more interesting to look at, something that suggests life and movement and energy, something that communicates vitality instead of settling. The hair becomes a counter-argument to the face, and the argument it makes is, I am still in motion, I am still rising, I have not given up. There is a final detail that can make or break every cut we have discussed, and it is the texture of the finish. A great cut fails completely if the hair looks like what I think of as cotton wool, that dry, gray, frizzy texture that suggests abandonment rather than care. The psychology of how we perceive surfaces is deep and ancient. Shiny objects are perceived as new, as valuable, as worthy of attention. Matte objects are perceived as old, as worn, as ready to be discarded. This perception happens below conscious thought, in the instant before we form opinions. The strategy for every lift cut requires finishing oils or gloss treatments that allow the hair to reflect light. The cut must show its architecture, and architecture requires definition. Without gloss, even the most precisely cut layers become a fuzzy blur, their angles lost in the haze of dull texture. The shine communicates that this hair is cared for, that this woman invests in herself, that this image is intentional rather than accidental. A lift cut without gloss is like a beautiful building photographed in fog. The structure exists, but you cannot see it. As we come to the end of this conversation, I want you to understand something that can change your relationship with your reflection forever. You cannot stop gravity from affecting your skin. That is the contract we sign when we live long enough to see our faces change. But you can stop your hair from helping gravity do its work. You can refuse to add your own downward vectors to the ones that biology creates. The right haircut is a form of structural engineering for your image, a scaffolding that holds things up when the natural supports have begun to give way. The mindset shift I am asking you to make is significant but necessary. Stop holding on to length as a security blanket. The security it promises is false. It is not protecting you from being seen as aging. It is emphasizing exactly what you hope to hide. The curtain of hair is not a shield. It is a spotlight, illuminating the very changes you wished would remain in shadow. Courage, the willingness to cut what is not serving you, is the new anti-aging serum. It costs nothing but the willingness to change. Mae Musk, a woman who has redefined what it means to be visible at 75, wears her white hair short, sharp, and spiked upward. Every strand on her head is fighting gravity, pointing toward the sky instead of surrendering toward the earth. She does not look like a grandmother knitting quietly in the corner, hoping not to be noticed. She looks like a matriarch commanding the room, demanding attention, occupying space with intention. Her hair is making a statement that her face alone could not make. It is saying, I am still rising. I have not stopped ascending. Watch me. Before we part, I want to leave you with something practical that you can do in the next 60 seconds. I call it the jawline check. Go to a mirror and perform a simple experiment. First, tuck your hair behind your ears, removing it entirely from the area around your jaw. Then, use your hands to lift the hair at your crown, creating volume and height where it naturally sits flat. Now look at your reflection. Does your jawline look sharper with the hair removed from around it? Does your neck look longer with the crown lifted? Does your entire face appear more defined, more awake, more elevated? If the answer to any of these questions is yes, then gravity is winning the battle with your current haircut. Your existing style is working against you, adding weight where it should be adding lift, creating descent where it should be creating elevation. That information is power. You now know that your structure is waiting to be revealed, that the sharp jawline and long neck you see in that mirror test are available to you. They are simply being hidden by a haircut that does not understand what your face needs. It is time to call the stylist. It is time to show them what you saw in the mirror. It is time to claim the lift that has been waiting for you all along. If you want to continue this journey with me, if you want to be part of a community of women who are choosing to defy the drop instead of surrendering to it, I invite you to subscribe. We are not here to fight against time with weapons that do not work. We are here to use every tool available to present our faces in frames that elevate rather than imprison, that lift rather than drag, that celebrate rather than hide. Remember always that the right haircut defies gravity on your behalf. You do not have to accept the drop. You can choose the lift. Style is not about hiding your age. It is about honoring the woman you have become. Stay radiant, and I will see you in the next conversation.